Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, our guest is Aaron Aisen with Aisen Law, PLLC. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me, Gary.
So, Aaron, what got you into law?
I think it was watching shows like Matlock. I don't know, my dad used to watch it, and then my mom would like Perry Mason, and then I grew up watching Law and Order. And the law always intrigued me. It intrigued me for the, it kind of touches a lot of different things. And so that's how I got into it after I did a bachelor's degree and master's degree. And I said, well, let's go to law school and complete the trifecta. So,
yeah. So you've been doing law now for a while. What is it about law that gets you excited?
I think for me, it's the challenge of the puzzle. Almost every case is trying to take a set of facts and trying to make sense of them, and then trying to figure out how to help the client. The world is a complicated place, and the law seems to be everywhere. And sometimes I have clients who come to me and they're scared, they're confused, they're worried about how this is going to affect their life. And it's nice, and whether that's a company or an individual. And I really like being able to sit down with them and try to help them work through the problem that they have, or even prevent the problem. Sometimes it's setting up a company to make sure they don't have problems in the future. But I'll tell you, one of the best compliments I ever had was somebody who said, I haven't had a good night's sleep in 2 or 3 weeks because of this problem. Thank you so much. I finally got a good night's rest last night. Yeah. So, that's really gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the areas that you specialize in is cybersecurity. We had on, a week ago, we had on a computer guy that talked about cybersecurity and how from a computer side and more on the business side of things, how to protect yourself. But I wanted to talk to you today about, individuals and somebody having their identity stolen through, because of a flaw in their cybersecurity or something. So can you kind of give us in a little nutshell some of the best practices that you have for people if their identity has been stolen or they think it has been stolen?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things that's really important is to make sure that you document everything very, very carefully. And make sure that appropriate law enforcement agencies know. So that could mean filing a report with your local police department, filing a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, taking those steps to document everything that's transpired surrounding where you think the hack took place or the breach took place. So for example, let's suppose that you were trying to buy something and you clicked on a link, and after you've entered your credit card information and date of birth and everything else, you're like, oh, wait a second, I probably should wait, what? Why was I doing that? You've already clicked send. Okay, so, making sure you get all that information down. What was the name of the website? Filing the appropriate reports. And what that does is that puts you in a really nice situation. It puts you in a better situation. If, let's say, somebody opens up a credit card in your name or attempts to use the credit card information that you've already given to them, to go on a spree at Target or I don't know, the Apple Store or whatever, and you can then dispute those charges with the credit card company. That that's really easy to do. And if for some reason it gets sent into collections, and let's say it ends up in court, and I actually had this happen where somebody ended up in court because of a failed collections. You can go to them and say, look, I had my identity stolen. This is the who, when, where, why, and how. And more often than not, I think most reasonable people will back off when they say, okay, yeah, you were the victim of identity theft. But it's really about early documentation. It's really about making sure that you just get as much information about that as you possibly can.
So you just said that you've gone to court about this because of failed collections. So um, you're saying that if you get a bill or a collection notice from someone and you don't think it's yours, kind of what are the first steps that you should take with that?
Well, so so let's differentiate between two things. If somebody just takes your credit card number and attempts to make purchases with it,
Right.
then that's really easy to challenge with the credit card company or with your bank. And you have to jump on that, especially if it's a debit card.
Right.
Because the cash is already out and you want to make sure the bank, knows about that and they can, get you your cash back. With zero liability fraud, that's what most major credit card companies have, such as, Chase, American Express, whatever. So you let them know and then they can put a stop to that. That's one side of the scenario. That's a lot easier to deal with. What's a little bit more complicated to deal with is if, let's say, they get your information, date of birth, social security number, name, whatever, and then they open, let's say, a Best Buy credit card that you don't know about.
Right.
But instead, they've put down your name, address, and everything else, and so you wouldn't know about this until we're already until we're all the way down the road. And that's especially when it's really important to have all of that information available, because then you can go to court and say, Your Honor, I never opened this up. As soon as I learned about this, I filed the police report. I did whatever. The unfortunate reality too, Gary, is that in the second scenario that I described, you may not know about it until it's too late. So you may not even have any inkling that you need to file a police report or do whatever. But the minute that you do find out, that's when it's important to act. And it's important to file challenges with with TransUnion, Experian, Equifax. It's important to just, do everything you can to stop, to document the fact that this is not your credit card. Right. And sometimes, yes, you need to get an attorney involved, because sometimes they will not listen to you. And that's what happened, with the case I had. This client had tried to fight it and it didn't work. And so he got an attorney and we handled it, and they backed off. So, but it's important to just act. Time is not your friend with these things. You need to act just as quickly as you know that something is wrong.
So if, you always hear, hey, make sure you pull your credit, once a year, so forth. So what you're saying is, hey, if I pull my credit and I see something on there, then that's when, do I file the police report right then, or do I try to call whoever's, say it's some doctor's office, and do I try to call that doctor's office to get information about it before I call the police? What do I do?
I would generally recommend filing the report first, because that way you have something to show to them. And that, that raises another point I wanted to add is, checking your credit report every year is vital. Like you need to pull it. And you're entitled to one free credit report every year. And so so if you're doing that and you're paying attention to, and look, not everything is nefarious. Sometimes there's a missed keystroke or something happens, it happens, but that's why it's important, go over it, check your list of accounts, and just make sure that everything that they look at all the outstanding credit accounts you have, and just make sure that everything looks good. If something's off, challenge it, file the report, and you may not even do anything with it. There may not even be anything to do with it. The credit reporting places may just say, okay, there was a mistake made, we'll fix it, whatever. But you don't want to wait, checking it at least yearly. And even in today's world, it's maybe not such a bad idea to see if, to try to get some kind of credit monitoring, to where if something happens, they can alert you right away. And yes, it does pay you pay a few bucks for right. it. I was looking at one the other day. I think it was like $24 a month for all three. I think it was all three of them. Yeah. But having that so that if something weird comes up, getting notice of it really quickly is important. And as a general proposition, even locking your credit account, locking your credit accounts with the three credit reporting agencies is also a good idea. And then if you have to go get a loan for a car, or you want to open a new credit card or whatever, then you can just go unlock it for that particular thing and then relock it back up. And that costs nothing, or the cost is minimal, but there's just so much data floating around right now. And the days of being able to sleep at night knowing that your information is secure I think those are days gone past at this point. So
Right. Now, when you're talking about locking down your credit, so if I were to do that, am I calling each one of the credit bureaus, or how does that work?
So you just go online to each one of them, and you can just say locked. And usually you just fill out some information, fill out a quick profile. I mean, they've already got your information, but you create a
Right.
profile, and you basically just, a lot of times it's just a little button right in the middle of the screen, lock your account. They send you an email saying that your account is locked. And then again, if you have to go get credit for whatever reason, then you go back and you just unlock it for 24 hours and then relock it back. And that's really the safest way, the best preventative way to ensure that people don't do that, is
Right.
just by having them locked all the time unless you need them unlocked.
Right. So when they lock it, basically, when somebody goes to pull your credit to get a credit card or a mortgage or anything like that, basically, because it's locked, it tells them no.
Right. It won't let them through.
Yeah. I mean, because I know I have one of the monitoring services, and anytime, something tries to get opened or whatever, I get the message, and I have to approve the message, otherwise
Right.
it won't go through. So yeah, definitely have seen that. If somebody thinks that their identity has been compromised or stolen, not just a credit card, has somebody's using a credit card in California and we're here in Maryland, what are the steps that somebody should take? I know you said, hey, file a police report, but what are some of the steps that somebody can take to help lock things down and try to do some safeguards here?
Well, again, from a preventative point of view, and I'm not necessarily shilling for any particular company here, but to the extent that you can get some kind of policy from your insurance company or from McAfee or Norton or whoever, this can be expensive.
Right.
And so it's important to make sure that you have some kind of coverage available to be able to help you defer some of the costs, including attorney costs. So that's important. But a lot of times, so these companies they have people that can help you kind of, work through these steps. But it's basically making sure everything is documented, notifying the Federal Trade Commission, notifying the IRS, notifying all your credit card companies, just just making sure you have the documentation that you're notifying it. One other place you should probably notify is the Social Security Administration. Mm-hmm. And if you think that something like your Social Security number or whatever has been compromised, a report to the FBI is also probably in order. So there may not be anything you can do until something actually happens too. Identity theft can take a variety of forms. It can take, if you think your passport's been stolen, well, contact the State Department, file a report with Diplomatic Security Service. If it's, again, your social security number, contacting federal law enforcement and contacting the Social Security Administration. And then you just have to kind of deal with each situation and each part of it as you go along. And it can be frustrating. It can take years. That's part of the problem, is that some of these things will not go away quickly. Right. Sometimes you have to get an attorney involved, because sometimes a bank won't believe you right away, or someone, you might be dealing with government bureaucracy, and it just takes time. So it's just important to act quickly and to document and report as much as is necessary.
Yeah. I mean, I know from the IRS side, you can certainly, to be preventive, you could certainly apply for a personal identification number with the IRS, and then you have to, every year you will get a new letter, a new number and you'll give that to your tax preparer, and they put that information in for when they electronically file the tax return. So I
Right.
know that's another preventive way that that you can help with that. Because the IRS, again, they are seeing a lot of fraudulent tax returns being filed, and they may not have stolen your identity per se, but they have your social security number. And what they're doing is they're creating fake W-2s, trying to file to get the refund, and then leave you kind of hanging out there.
And if they file on February 1st and you file on February 28th, well, they got there first. Yeah, the social security number is it's a very pesky and annoying number, because it can cause, it's great for quick identification, but it's annoying because it's so easy. We use it on so many things that it's so, I mean, and even just basic things like your name, date of birth. I mean, you go to a doctor's office, what's the first thing they ask you? Well, what is your name and date of birth? And you could have two patients standing behind you that are listening to this information. It's very difficult in this day and age to really try to keep that identifying information confidential. I mean, people have tried, and they're trying to pass laws that do that, but as a practical matter, it's very difficult. And so I don't want people to panic or be scared or lay in bed at night worrying that their social security number, date of birth, and name are on the dark web, and that someone's going to file an IRS return, after, but it is still something to be vigilant about. And not just that, but also being vigilant to making sure you don't voluntarily or inadvertently give it away, thinking that somebody is the right person to give it to when it's really the wrong person to give it to.
Right. I think the big thing, also is letting people know, because there's so many scams out there, and to make sure that our elderly parents and things understand that, IRS isn't going to call you, first of all. If somebody calls you and says, hey, I need you to identify who you are, and they're asking for your full social security number, then they're asking for your date of birth, something's not right. That's not something that typically is done. So just be careful.
Well, it's also, I don't want to say it's gotten to the point where you can't trust anyone, but I mean, especially this time of year. I mean, think about how many charities are reaching out to you and calling you and saying, would you be willing to donate to this mission or whatever it might be? Well, that's all great. Nobody should, turn it down because they're scared of giving away their information. But usually what I advise is, okay, number one, don't ever give it to somebody over the phone.
Right.
Just say, look, I will go on to your website. I will go on to, and I will drop a check off or whatever it might be. Right. But I strongly advise against people giving that type of stuff over the phone to any charity that might be out there. Also, another thing I'd also add, and this is more in the credit card scheme of things, but beware of the scammers and hackers and whatever have gotten very good at scaring people.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you wake up in the morning, you see an email from your bank saying, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, you're still rubbing your eyes, and you see an email from your bank saying, oh, if you don't, or your account's been frozen, click here to resolve issue, whatever. And you're just like, oh my gosh. So you click on it and away you go. Stop, take a breath, don't panic. And, then find the number to the bank, get it separately, call them up and find out what's going on. Don't be scared. If you're getting a bill that you're not anticipating from a group that you don't do business with, chances are pretty good it's a scam. Yeah. I will add though, and I saw this the other day. I had a friend at a prestigious law firm who sent me an email with a link attached, and I went through. I wasn't expecting it, so I kind of went through the whole thing, and it was very good. So I called him up. I said, did you send me an email? He's like, no, I didn't send you an email. If I hadn't thought, paying attention to unexpected things, that's something else. And stay away from Nigerian princes. There is no money coming out of Nigeria. I promise you, there is no money coming out of Nigeria.
Right.
And don't give money to people that you meet on dating websites. That's another one too. Stay away from that too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but you're right. There are a ton of scams out there. Because I know this morning when I logged in, I probably had 3 or 4 emails that say, "Hey, your unpaid invoice." And it's like, okay, well,
Right,
I don't even know who you are, so I know it's not, unpaid. And on top of that, that's not how, my vendors communicate with me type thing. Uh,
right.
so I agree with you. It's like if it's something out of the ordinary, you got to ask questions. I know the new thing I keep getting are texts from Netflix saying that my account is locked down, that I need to click on the link attached to get it cleared up. It's like, no, that's not it. So you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's just like, if there's something that doesn't look right, you gotta make a phone call. Don't call the number that's on
Right.
the email.
Right. And
Which
if maybe a catchphrase would work here to help, I guess I would say take a minute before you click it.
Yeah,
Just take a minute. Don't react. And they rely on the fact that you're going to overreact.
yep,
They absolutely rely on that. Um they're very good at this. I don't know how many reviewers are familiar with the concept of social engineering.
hmm,
It's very, you have people who work on fear, but you also have people who are really good con artists at building trust with people.
right,
And so there's somebody that you think is just being friendly, when in reality they're gathering information about you. Information is a very powerful weapon, and it can be really good when it works in your favor, and it can be really bad when it works against you.
right,
But even putting stuff up on your social media posts,
yeah,
I mean, I still am befuddled that people will say, 1 minute ago, traveling in Paris or traveling in the Caribbean, it's, they're still there. And,
right,
it doesn't take anything to Google somebody's home address so it's a constant, you have to be in a constant state of vigilance these days. That's all I mean, that's the most basic way of saying is
yeah, yeah.
vigilance.
I agree, because like you're saying, they do try to scare you. I mean, I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago. The big thing is they were calling people's houses and saying that they were from the federal government and you had an outstanding debt with the IRS, and that they were sending the sheriff's office to your house to arrest you, and you needed to Western Union them money. And it's
Right.
like,
I
there's all
got
kinds of issues with that. But I'm telling you, I got a ton of those phone calls from my clients. Hey, and it's just like, hang up the phone on them. Don't worry about it. They're not, they can threaten you all they want. They're not coming, and so forth. So,
I used to get them from Customs and Border Protection.
okay.
You have a package down at the border, we're going to come arrest you unless you pay the fine and release. I'm like, I've got no packages coming in.
Right, right, right. So, all right, Aaron,
And if I do, you can keep it.
yeah, exactly, because it's not something I ordered. So we've covered a lot of stuff. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
I think I want people to feel comfortable with um I want people to feel comfortable with still living their lives and not living in a state of panic. I think I think one issue that sometimes comes up too that I think is out there is are debit cards or credit cards preferable, especially for online purchases. I know that there are folks out there like Dave Ramsey who strongly advocate against credit cards, and I understand the psychological reasons, and the research is valid. You tend to spend more when you pay via card versus cash, and I understand that. But you should also know that there are protections in place with credit cards that are going to make it a lot easier. And we kind of touched on this earlier, that the cash is gone with a debit card. But one thing, if you're going to order online with debit cards, is create a separate account for your online orders with a separate debit card. And that way, and then if you know that the price is going to be $40, transfer the $40 into that separate account with that separate debit card. Because that way, if they get a hold of the number or something happens, then you can work with the bank to clear up the overdraft fees and everything like that. But they're not going to get a hold of your main your
Yeah.
main account with all your cash. I think that's just a really prudent way if you really want to use a debit card. Understand it's still going to be a little trickier with your bank, but it's still, if you want to go down that road, that's probably the safest way to do that. But again, I don't want anybody to be scared. I don't want anybody like hyperventilating over this. Just, you can still live your life. Just, just be vigilant. I had somebody in a doctor's office. One of the secretaries was like, "And what is your date of birth?" Like really, really loudly. I'm like, she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." It's like, so just, just caution, vigilance, but don't hyperventilate over it. Right. And don't live in a state of panic where you don't want to leave your house or do anything online. It's just important to be smart, be safe. And that's the most important message I could get out to anybody.
I mean, one of the additional things that I've done is I've set up a separate email address for any time I order anything, so it goes to that email address and so forth. So I know my regular, email address that I'm using. They're not going to come to me for any type of collection or anything else,
right?
Because I have this other email that I use for all of that. Part of that helps me cut down on my spam that I'm getting,
right.
But also I think that that's another way to help yourself when it comes to that. So, so Aaron, if people have questions for you, or unfortunately have an issue that they've run into with this, how can they get in touch with you to get some help?
So my law firm website is Aisen Law PLLC.com. That's AISENLAW PLLC.com. I think it's in your show description as well.
It is.
And so if people want more information about tips that they can use to prevent this, or they're having a situation, they should, absolutely feel free to reach out. So
great. Really appreciate your time today. I think a lot of people got a lot of good tips. So this week our guest was Aaron Aisen with Aisen Law PLLC. I'll see you guys next week.
This show has been produced by Market Domination LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.